Now what we'd like to talk about is 3 things to know about tax court. Number 1, we're recommending perhaps you probably don't want to get your information from tax protesters online on YouTube. If you do choose to do that, that's fine, but don't use that information in tax court. That's basically saying you're bringing what they call a frivolous claim to tax court. And the IRS.gov has an entire page titled The Truth About Frivolous Tax Arguments, several pages, as a matter of fact. A couple highlights. I thought this was a great quote. This document is not intended to provide an exhaustive list of frivolous tax arguments. Merely because a frivolous argument is not included in this document doesn't mean it's not frivolous. What a great way to cover your ass. We're going to list everything here, but just in case we don't list everything, whatever you say is also going to be listed. Some arguments included the filing of a tax return is voluntary. Taxpayers can reduce their federal income tax by filing a 0 return. Taxpayer is not a person as defined by the Internal Revenue Code, thus is not subject to the federal income tax laws, and taxpayers are entitled to a refund of the Social Security taxes paid over their lifetime. These are just a few examples of some of the frivolous arguments the IRS talks about. And did you have any additional ones you wanted to mention?
There's always the original issue, discount. Only your wages are not taxable, only your earned income, or vice versa. It goes on, and Fifth Amendment claims, Fourth Amendment claim, Ninth Amendment claims, 10th Amendment claims. And this is where I always try to explain myself, yet it's, tax protesters don't want to hear me. They don't want to hear what I'm actually saying. They just imagine what I'm saying. They're not picking up the nuance. So here goes. This whole idea the IRS has about the frivolous tax arguments, this is their explanation, because you actually read the court's decision. Okay, so this is where I'm going to be on the side of the tax protester. Okay? Mm-hmm. Going to be on your side. Because what's really annoying about the IRS and what's really annoying about the judges, this is what they say. When you bring an argument, they're saying you're frivolous because you're frivolous.
Yes, exactly.
Why is it frivolous? Because it's frivolous. That's a tautology, and it's really, really annoying. It's like if someone's bringing a claim, if it's so easy to dismiss it, then just say it. If it's so easy, just say you're wrong because this. Mm-hmm. Okay.
You're wrong because you're wrong.
You're wrong because of a reason, not because you're wrong because we said so.
Right.
So that's what drives me nuts about it, because when you look at, when you look at a lot of the constitutional claims to the unconstitutionally of a personal income tax, look, I find those claims persuasive. I find them very persuasive of how the income tax violates pretty much all of the Constitution. You just can't. It's like either you have a tax on personal income or you have a limited government. Pick one. Mm-hmm. That's really it. They cannot exist together. So that I do agree with the end results of taxpayers, but however the reasoning just stinks. And they go to the same old wells of hearing what they want to hear, the echo chamber of Winston Schraub's type people who just talk in circles, and then people who you buy your tax protester program from. Hey, get this program. We'll show you how not to pay taxes. How about this? Just don't pay taxes. I mean, you said there's no law, so hey, why do I need to pay $500 not to pay what I don't have to pay? You're right? I don't get that. Those people are really scammy, and I mean, they're really nasty. The 3 things never to say the IRS, I have that video up.
Yes.
That's very popular on YouTube. And I mean, that's just loaded with comments just from people attacking me, you're part of the IRS, and then the comments are all these frivolous arguments. They're all coming up. So I always see, when I check the comments on there, I do check them, and there's a lot of hate. YouTube is full of the world's worst people. Some do have some supporters on there, but I like it. I just like seeing it. And also, there's 210,000 views, I think now, which is
you're YouTube famous. I think.
Yeah, I'm YouTube famous. It's a horrible video, but it is the greatest trolling around because people do have to feel compelled to leave an argument. So anyway, the thing is, and my dad was mentioning that he was up at tax court one day, and he saw somebody getting up there starting to make one of these bullshit arguments. And the court says, do you really want to do this? Are you sure? And the judge says, you know what? There's some of those guys in the suits in the back there. Just take a little time, go talk to one of those. And, my dad was back there with other attorneys who did not represent the IRS. And they're saying, cut the crap. Okay? Don't do that. So what do you have? Okay. Do you want to get out of this for the least amount? Okay. Agree to this. Okay. Mm-hmm. Shut your mouth and agree to this. And then, the guy went back up. He's like, so what I've agreed to do is enter into an agreement with the IRS, and that we'll do this. And she's like, okay, good.
Much better.
Good. Because the judges really don't. I mean, you could see a pro se who's not aware, like, well, should I fight back or not fight back? Should I push or not push? And they don't really know what's going to happen, and because they haven't seen it. They haven't seen it in action. And the judge is just like, okay, I don't want to hammer you. All right, I really don't. I'm not going to feel good if I hammer you, but if you keep this up, I will. And then the person's like, okay, that means I really should push, right? Now I really got him on the ropes. No!
There's actually a whole section on the IRS website that explains the penalties that the courts could impose on those who pursue tax cases on frivolous grounds. It includes penalties, possibility of facing criminal prosecution. And I mean, they've got case after case they list as examples to go, dude, we're not screwing around. Look, we've penalized people. We've put people in jail.
Yeah, and I mean, even though that's their definition of frivolous, okay? Whether it's frivolous or not, in real life, I don't care. The IRS is defining it as frivolous, and I'll tell you, the government is the one who collects things. They're the ones with the power. You do not have the power.
We've said it again and again. Just because we do these podcasts and these articles and everything, it doesn't mean we agree with the IRS. It's the opposite. We don't agree with them, but it's like trying to fight Goliath. And we're just doing the little bit we can legally. Here's what we can do.
Right.
Educate people.
Right. This is what's going to happen. If for us just to go into a fantasy land to say, oh, yeah, you don't have to pay, just go in here like this. Well, what happens when, that's funny, that podcast said this was going to happen. But this happened instead. Mm-hmm. Trust me, it's not us. We won't be the ones.
Yeah.
With the bill, you will be. So, that's the thing. That a lot of these people out there telling you the wrong thing to do, telling you things you want to hear, they're not helping you out. I mean, the reality is that the government decides how powerful the government's going to be.
Yep. So another important thing that we sort of touched on in the first part, but I'd like to mention again because it is so important. Decide, do you really want to go to tax court? It's so important to exhaust all of the other options. Mm-hmm. Did you try an offer and compromise? Did you try, and there's so many options that people probably don't know about.
Well, and the people know about the options, but they didn't give the factual basis to support what they wanted. That is what's there. It's like, yeah, you could have done an offer and compromise, but all you just said was you threw some stuff at them. You didn't do the work to support what your position is. You just did this much of, you did 5 pages of paperwork. Yeah, you needed to do the 5 pages, and then you needed 200 pages to support what you were saying. To say, well, this is why, this is why, this is why, this is why. Tell your story. And so people just sort of don't go into the level of detail necessary. You're trying to convince an IRS employee to rule in your favor, okay? Let's assume that they want to. Let's assume that, yeah, I want to help this person out. Can they just do that because? No. They need their supervisor's going to make sure that they're doing their job. So you have to. So I mean, a great way to do is like, yep, the IRS guy is my buddy, but I got to be a buddy to him to make sure that he has something to cover his ass when his supervisor comes. Hey, why'd you give that guy a break?
Yep.
And that's what you need to do. If you don't give them the things that they need to cover your ass, they can't rule for you. They just can't. And that's what people always fight in tax court. You fail to give the person grounds so they could rule in your favor, and now you're fighting something in tax court that didn't even need to go to tax court, and you're going to lose. You're going to lose because you didn't exhaust your administrative remedy time and time again.
Yes, I found a great quote on Biz Tax Law. They had a Q&A, and it said, do I have a chance of winning in tax court? Does the IRS win every time? And I thought the response was great. Given the fact that the IRS has already reviewed your case and audit, most tax court cases are settled in favor of the IRS. Unless the IRS auditor is just not listening or being a complete jerk, the IRS should have heard your best case at audit. They already should have heard this.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You don't want to be bringing your best argument up in tax court. That means you lost. Even if it's a great argument, it's like, well, that's fine, but you didn't bring that up to lower. And just one thing about the that quote, I think the author is implying, because he does sound like he knows what he's talking about. The IRS should have heard your best case at audit. I would just say he probably means that also at audit appeal. Okay, because the audit, you can get something to really go against you, and this is what you need to know about auditors. They hate appeals. We had ex-IRS auditors working here, and they're like, oh, appeals, I hate those jerks. Always undoing all the hard work we did. Taxpayers really do owe that money. And God, we hate appeals. I'm like, oh, all
Good
right.
to know.
I'm like,
Good to know.
all right, well, we appeal everything here.
All right. Well, something funny about that quote too. They implied that, if you're dealing with a complete jerk, perhaps this situation
go.
could be different. IRS Medic, the law offices of Parent LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.